decided to take the GRE because A, it's an expensive exam and ETS books aren't enough to get a very high score. 12, 13 lakhs for just the rent in London, and that is one of the cheaper options you will have if you're one of the smarter children and you get a lot of limelight. Indians are talented in general, so they usually fill up a lot of seats in the best universities in the world. And commute here is very expensive. So
Hmm.
you have to factor in both in mind and do some calculations for yourself.
Sitting in classroom, you're allowed to use your mobile phones, your laptops, because every college has a different format. SOP was something, where you just it's a blank sheet of paper. They just ask you to write. You also require a professional letter of recommendation. That I realized this rule very late, and that was a mistake on my end.
Hi, guys, and welcome back to College Dunya Study Abroad. Today, we are joined here with Yatharth Shah, who is pursuing his MSc in International Management, and he's doing that from Imperial College London. So, hi, Yatharth, how is it going?
Hi there, it's going well, and thank you so much for having me here.
Perfect. Can you give a small introduction about yourself for our viewers?
Certainly, yes. So I'll deep dive into my educational background. Initially, I finished my 10th grade from Mumbai, and then I decided that, due to the glamour of it, I wanted to do something like engineering and join the prestigious universities like IITs and ITs and the rest. I did that for a couple of years. I studied very hard for it, but I realized that engineering is not something that I really want to do. And just for the glamour of the universities, I did not want to pursue a career in something that I was not very interested in. And it was a confusing time as a 17-year-old. I bet everyone's facing that or has faced that some point in the future, some point in the past. And yes, so then I was researching some career options, and then I decided that I had a keen interest in studying about businesses, not exactly finance or accounting per se, but just business as a whole. So that is why I pursued Bachelor's in Business Administration from NMIS, which was another good university in India. Soon after I finished my bachelor's, I realized that yes, it had equipped me with the knowledge to, get a job, but whether it had equipped me with the skill sets to get a very decent job in India, I was not so sure. And then in 2020, COVID struck, and we suddenly had a lot of free time in our hands. I decided, why not make good use of it. I started researching master courses abroad in London and in the US, and decided that I would like to focus primarily on UK. And when I was going through college requirements, I started studying for. I looked at the required GRE scores, GRE or GMAT scores. I decided to take the GRE, and I took a month and a half, and I devoted myself completely to it because A, it's an expensive exam, and B, people and colleges value it a lot.
Right.
I
I,
managed
I
to get a.
would I would like to interrupt, and I would like to point out that Yatharth here has a GRE score of 330, which is an impressive score. During his undergrad as well, he has passed through distinction and has a merit scholarship in his hand. So that's a good deal, Yatharth. And my next follow-up question with you would be, why only London? Why only UK? Why the city of Sherlock? And why not US or New York or something like that?
Yeah, that is a question I had asked myself many times. There are primary two reasons for it. First, if you do a master's in the US, it's usually more than a year, and which adds up the costs for. They usually cost about 50 lakhs just for the fees, and that is something I'm talking on the lower end. Living in US is expensive if you're living in a country like in a city like New York, where living costs are high, rents are high.
Hmm.
Secondly, I'm aware that London's not cheap as well. I'm
Right.
fully aware of that. But UK has a thing called as a 2 year stay back, and where if you pursue a master's or an undergrad course here, you can stay in the country for 2 years, regardless whether you have a job or not. So and US does not have something like that. You need to have a job within a span of 6 to 8 weeks.
Right.
They do offer a stay back, but that is conditional whether you do whether you pursue a STEM degree or not.
Hmm.
And since I was pursuing a management degree, it will only be called a STEM degree if I major in finance. I wasn't so sure if I wanted to do that. If you major in finance and get a STEM degree, you get a 3-year stay back there. If you don't, you get just a 1-year stay back. And that wasn't enough time to get back my investment if I start working there.
Okay.
Problem?
Now let's talk about the university that you're studying in, which is the Imperial College London. Why did you choose Imperial College London? Is my first question, and the second question is, did you have other universities in your shortlist as well?
Right. The reason I chose Imperial College London was, I think it's pretty self-explanatory for the fact that it is a world-renowned university. It is a major brand in the UK and the world. It constantly ranks in the world top 10 universities. And they have a very strong STEM focus and also when it comes to learning. So that's why I chose Imperial. I also did have I applied to a sum total of 3 universities in the UK.
What were the
that's
universities?
That's not a large number, I'm aware, but the
Right.
3 universities are London Business School, Imperial College London being the second, and the third was London School of Economics.
Right.
So those 3 universities. Would you like to know the outcomes as well?
Yeah. I want to know where did you got the acceptance and where did you got the rejects as well?
Certainly. Right. So when it came to London Business School, LBS, which is probably the best business school in the UK,
Yes.
would not deny that. What happened there is I got waitlisted due to them. The reason being that I had very little work experience, and they needed profiles with some amount of work experience.
Okay.
And what they're primarily looking for is work experience in big brands. Like if you have internships from Goldman Sachs, if you have work experience at Microsoft, you are pretty ideal to get in them.
Okay.
So they waitlisted me. They did not reject me. And then Imperial gave me an offer, which I had to submit before, which I had to accept or decline before a deadline. And that deadline was before when I was getting the result of the LBS waitlist, whether I am in or not. So when I was put in the waitlist, I had to reject it. And then Imperial offered me. LSE also came up with an offer. But after much thought, I decided to go with Imperial.
Right. But do you kind of regret rejecting London Business School for the waitlist?
I kind of do not, because I have a lot of friends there. And I would say certainly it is the better university when it comes to brands. But when it comes to job prospects, I think there wasn't much difference, and that was my main priority when I came here, to just get a decent paying job.
Okay. So we'll come to the job section as well, but
No problem.
let's take a step back to your GRE score, which is 330, right?
Right.
How did you manage to achieve this particular score, and do you want to give some preparation tips to our viewers?
Certainly. How did I manage that? Well, firstly,
How much were you studying in a day? Like, do you have some numbers around it?
right. I suppose I don't really know how to answer this question, because I was studying a crazy amount, I would say, and I would not recommend going that deep in, and certainly try to do it while doing other things. But since it was COVID and my university was on a break and I had nothing else to do, I used to study about 9 to 10 hours a minimum, and then practice papers in the remaining time. So which GRE usually takes 2 to 3 months to study, but I finished all of it in 1 month because I had an insane amount of time. But how did I study? Firstly, I studied from the books that is provided by ETS. Then there are some other reference book that you can go through.
What was your score in quant and verbal?
Yeah, my quant score was 169 on 170. I got one question wrong, and my verbal score was 161 on 170. As you know, GRE, verbal section is probably way tougher than quant, which is why I would recommend focusing on getting vocabulary correct and having a very expansive vocabulary. And I would also recommend going through YouTube channels like Greg Matt. It's spelled as GRE GMAT, but it's called as Greek Mat.
Right.
That was insanely helpful, and I would definitely recommend looking for external sources because the ETS books aren't enough to get a very high score.
Okay, perfect. Did you also give any language proficiency exam?
Yes. So I was required to give a language proficiency exam after getting an admit. People usually, so I had three options. One was TOEFL, IELTS, and the third was Duolingo.
Right.
IELTS and TOEFL, I'm not sure about how much they cost, but they are upwards of 10 to 15,000.
Yes.
Duolingo was $50 at the time, and
Okay.
I decided to take it. And not much preparation was required. I just required a passing mark to get the visa and the college final approval.
All right. So one thing interesting I noticed about you that you gave your language proficiency exam after you got the admit, right? Usually candidates do not do this. Usually people are required to give it before their acceptance and before their this whole thing. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So that was a very detailed information about the GRE references and the YouTube channels that you recommended. Our viewers will certainly, I'm hoping our viewers might certainly get some help from there. So now let's talk about your course at Imperial College, right?
Yeah.
Which is the International Management. Tell me something about it. How is the course? How are the faculties over there? And what do you actually study in this particular course?
Right. So Imperial, the business college offers two particular management degrees. It has a lot of degrees, but two are focused towards management. Some other degrees that they have are marketing, accounting, and finance, but that's not what we're here for. So the two management degrees are Masters in Management and Masters in International Management. They too sound very similar, very easy to get confused with, but they are completely different. Masters in Management is for someone who's done a degree, a background in engineering, or let's say arts or something like that, and has no idea what works, no idea what accounting is, no idea what balance sheet, income statement, all of that is. Whereas there are some of us who have a fair bit of an idea. As you recall, I did a bachelor's in business administration.
Yes.
So I had a base which was ready. And had I been studying it again, it would be a waste of my time and the teachers and the faculties and the university. So they have another degree, but for people which have a commercial background, which is the Masters in International Management. I would say it was a fantastically designed degree. Mainly for the fact that they take the international management very, very seriously. The reason I'll tell you that is there was continuously, we had international faculties flying in and out for teaching us subjects, guest faculty. It did not stop there. After back in February, so I joined in September and February, we were taken on a trip to Estonia, which is a Nordic country, and Estonia and Finland. And this trip lasted for about 9 to 10 days, where we worked with the Estonia government to try to, and the Estonia government assigned us some random NGOs and companies where we did a consulting project for them. So not only were we working in an international environment like London, it was something called, it was something in, in a country I probably would not have even been to had it not been for Imperial. Like Estonia, it's not on the top of everyone's list to visit. So that was amazing. We also went to Portugal after that, where there was another project that we were working on. And then there were other global trips, like some were taken to Dubai, some were taken to New York. So you really get a very, international outlook towards things. You get to know how work is done throughout the world, how people are managed throughout the world, different cultures, and which is necessary when you want to build a business that is global.
Right. Now that you have mentioned about so many trips and so much of travel is happening in your particular course, I want to talk about expenses now. What is the fee structure for your course?
So my course was about 33,000 pounds to be precise.
Okay.
And this fees is increased by 10% every year. So if you decided to put off your degree by another year, just keep this in mind. And whereas the Masters in Management is about 2,000 pounds cheaper, which is 31,000 pounds, close to 31 lakhs.
All right. And the travel that you're talking about to various countries and places, right? Uh, the cost of traveling, is that also included in this annual cost, or do you have to pay some extra sum for these particular assignments and
Yeah, yeah. So getting to that, the reason there's a premium on international management is because of the trips, and they're
Hmm.
completely paid for,
Hmm.
except the ones in Dubai and New York. So we
Okay.
had three options: Iceland, Dubai, New York. We
Okay.
can choose and do a project there. That
Hmm.
was open for everyone in the business school, not just for our batch. So that was payable.
Hmm.
But the university has many grants. So I applied for a grant on why you know I deserve to go there, but I've been working very hard and trying to save a lot of money, so they made it free for me. I had to pay for flights though.
Okay.
When it comes to Estonia and Portugal, they were
Hmm.
completely sponsored for, except
Hmm.
some half they provided meals only half of the times. So
Okay.
sometimes when you were out exploring alone, you had to figure out meals for yourself, but it's not
Hmm.
a major cost, I would say. Hotels and flights were paid for.
Right, right. Okay. So your course, the fee that you are incurring right now is pretty hefty. How are
Yeah.
you funding your education? Are you sponsoring it yourself, or do you have an education loan or something?
Yes. So I had this conversation with my parents, and it's a very, very large amount to pay for a year. I completely agree with that.
Hmm.
When you add living costs, it's
Right.
I had to pay about 12, 13 lakhs for just the rent in London, and that is one of the cheaper options you will have.
Yeah.
And I remember I you know it's very expensive. That's the bottom line. I took an education loan
Hmm.
and completely funded it myself. And right now, when I'm earning, I'm paying it bit by bit. But even
Hmm.
as I was studying, I was working part time continuously throughout the year.
Hmm.
Part time apparently pays very well in the UK, so you can take care of your basic maintenance like groceries, eating
Hmm.
out, and
Hmm.
socializing, and
Hmm.
also save up a bit for paying off your loan. So I would
Right,
definitely
right.
recommend doing that.
Right, right. So we'll touch up upon accommodation. We'll also talk about part-time jobs as well. But let's now focus upon the education loan that you have right now.
Yeah.
Which was the bank that you approached, and what is the interest rate that you are incurring right now?
Right. So the bank that I approached was Bank of Baroda, which had the lowest interest rate at the time,
Okay.
and it was close to about 7.7. But with the admin costs and everything, it became 8.2%.
Okay.
HDFC was giving around 8.5. SBI was around that ballpark figure as well.
Hmm.
It did not matter. It does not matter right now, which was the lowest interest rate because everyone has hiked their interest rate so much.
Hmm.
So I'm paying close to 9.5, 10% interest due to
Right.
the recent macroeconomic downturn. So
Hmm.
that's a bit about my loan.
All right, all right. So now that we have covered some details about your course and the syllabus that you have, the things that you're doing in your course, now let's talk about your campus and your college life.
Mhm.
You flew from India and you are now in London. What was the first experience of London? And then what was the first experience of your college, your university? Please
Yes.
tell me something about that.
So when I first flew to London, it was, I would say, a very big step, taking a one-way ticket to somewhere,
Hmm.
and somewhere where you have no one who knows you and you don't know anyone there as well.
Hmm.
So I would say it was unnerving but exciting as well.
Hmm.
It was just about the end of COVID for us, and we had to quarantine for 2 weeks,
Hmm.
and we had booked an Airbnb which was on the border of London.
Hmm.
So I was there exploring. It was pretty exciting. Once Imperial started, I would say it was exciting as well, but it was very intimidating.
Hmm.
You would think in your undergrad or something that if you're one of the smarter children and you get a lot of limelight, uh, that is completely taken away from you at Imperial, because then you are not a big fish in a small pond anymore.
Yes.
It's an ocean out there, and there are people all over the world who are probably much, much, much smarter than you, or just as smart as you are.
Yes.
So it's nice. I was a bit nervous at the beginning, but
Hmm.
it just turned out to be a magnificent journey, which involved not just learning new things, but growing myself as well.
Perfect. I want to talk about now, do you have Indian students as well in your batch or at the college? And what
Yeah.
is the ratio of people who are coming from different backgrounds?
Yes, we do have Indian students, and the reason being very obvious is that our population's amazingly huge, and second, Indians are talented in general, so they usually fill up a lot of seats in the best universities in the world.
Right.
So I had a batch size, which I had the smallest batch size in Imperial. It was about 55 people, and we had about 6 Indians. So I would say
Okay.
the ratio is 1:9 or something.
Right. All right. So apart from, is Imperial all about studies, or do you also do something else to unwind, or do you also have some other fests and events or something like that?
Right. I would say Imperial is not at all as they say about studying. At least I would speak about the business school part. We have parties going on throughout the year. Um,
Mhm.
the college has 3 college bars and 1 college club, which is
Mhm.
not something we're used to in India. So
Mhm.
students usually go to the college bars after the day is done.
Mhm.
So it's very different from what we have here. We
Okay.
have parties for we just need reasons to party. The university.
Right.
We finished our first term and then they had a grand party for that. And they booked a
Mhm.
major museum in London and they threw a party there. Then they had a ball night. So
Mhm.
yeah, I would say it's not completely about studies, but
Mhm.
I would say it's a balance of both.
Okay. So when you first landed at Imperial, and what was your accommodation like? Where were you staying? On-campus accommodation or off-campus accommodation?
Right. So this was actually a dilemma I faced, m- you know, when I was deciding my accommodation. On-campus accommodation can be expensive,
Hmm.
and because it's close to the college, and the college is in one of the richest areas and the most posh
Hmm.
areas, South Kensington,
Hmm.
uh, where people like Richard Branson live.
Hmm.
And off campus can be further away, but there is an issue of security because you're not really going there and seeing the checking out the place hands
Right.
on.
Right.
And it can be further away from the college, which can eat into your commute time.
Hmm.
So, and commute here is very expensive. So
Hmm.
you have to factor in both in mind and do some calculations for yourself. So
Hmm.
I decided to go for something which was in between. It was an external provider of rooms,
Hmm.
but it was co-owned by Imperial. So I
Okay.
had the guarantee, the fact that not, a mishap would not happen there,
Hmm.
and also the fact that it was very cheap than what Imperial accommodations are. So firstly,
Okay.
Imperial does not provide accommodations of its own. Let me make that
Okay.
very clear. It
Okay.
doesn't for postgrad students. So
Okay.
the student halls are only for undergrad, but they do have a few halls which they co-own or sublet, which are close to university, but they're very
Hmm.
expensive.
All right. Can we talk something about the numbers over here? What is the on-campus expense that you would incur, and what is the
Yeah.
off-campus expenses?
Yes. So when I was researching the on-campus halls, the rent would be something for a studio room, and studio rooms are not very large. So
Right.
that it was close to around £400 a week, which is 40,000 rupees a week, which
Okay.
is a substantial amount to pay for a small room. But it is London. Um, Off campus, I've seen on the outskirts of London, it goes to as much as £200 a week if
Hmm.
you factor in a decent sized room with a study and everything. But the commutes are very, commute is very expensive. So if you take a tube from somewhere which is zone 5
Hmm.
in London to zone 1 where your university is, it will
Hmm.
cost you about 500 rupees one way. So you have to keep that in mind, that if you go to university 5 times a week, it's 500 into 10, which is close to 5,000 rupees, which is
Right.
not cheap as well.
Right.
So what I paid for, I lived at a busable journey from Imperial, which
Hmm.
was a 1 hour walk, a 15-minute cycle, and a 20-minute bus
Hmm.
to Imperial. I had a studio room to myself with an attached bathroom because there was no other option.
Hmm.
So it was a complete thing. I had a kitchen, a bathroom, a bed, a study, all in the same room. Very well
Hmm.
designed.
Hmm.
I got the cheapest room in the whole, uh, you know, ecosystem, and I paid
Hmm.
about £235 a week, which was around 23,500.
Right.
But rooms there usually, so as you increase the floors, the price goes up. So there are people paying 30,000 on an average there
Right.
for a week.
Right. And how were you managing your food? Were you cooking yourself?
Um, I would not lie to you. No, was not. But I wasn't eating out as well. I've eaten out very few times when I came, ever since I've come here. But I wouldn't say I was cooking much. But then you get raw ingredients and convenient food stops here very often. There's a huge eating out culture here. So firstly, I relied on McDonald's. Not the best idea. I put on a lot of weight.
Right.
But then I shifted to something called as meal deals here, which is very popular in the UK, where
Okay.
you go to all major supermarket stores like Tesco, there is Marks and Spencer's, and there is Waitrose, which offer for £3, which is around 300 rupees, you get main item to eat, which is like a sandwich or a burger or something, which are usually very, very healthy because they put everything according to guidelines.
Okay.
You get a drink, which is usually a Starbucks frap, those pre-made ones.
Right.
And you get a snack, which is usually a bag of chips, salad, or fruit salads, or a protein bar. So I usually found tremendous value in those, where I could get stuff for about, which was 800, 900 rupees just for 300. And it's pretty filling as well. So, and then you can make your own sandwiches and everything. So a mix of everything.
Okay. All right. So now I have a bit interesting question. So back in India, what happens is colleges and universities usually have an attendance, a minimum attendance that is to be maintained by the students. Does that happen at Imperial as well? Like, are you expected to have like 70, 80% of attendance?
Not at all. That's not the culture here. The culture here is very different. You might be called to university if there is any issues in your performance, but otherwise there is no minimum minimum attendance. There's also not the culture where you cannot. So people here are pretty free when it comes to, sitting in classroom. You're allowed to use your mobile phones, your laptops, definitely, and you're allowed to walk in and out of the lecture. People don't usually make, object a lot when you do that. So yeah, that was a culture shock that I received when I came here.
Okay, okay. Do you want to give a shout out to any one particular faculty that you think is a very good faculty for you?
Certainly, yes. I would certainly recommend learning from a gentleman called as Mr. Tommaso Velletti, who flew in from Italy for every lecture that he delivered, and he was our economics professor, probably one of the best professors I've had. And he was also an economic advisor to the European Union, which is a pretty big thing, apparently. Yes, so he was a fantastic professor, and I would definitely, if you are, if you have the chance to go to Imperial, definitely learn a thing or two from him.
All right, all right. So now let's talk about your application process, right? So what were the steps that you took while you were researching, and then while you were filling out the application form, while you were formulating your SOP and LORs? Can you elaborate the process that you faced and the challenges that you had?
Yes. So firstly, I classified universities that I was applying to into 3 buckets. One is dream, one is average, and third is safety. That I think everyone does that.
Yes, yes.
And these 3 colleges I put in the dream list, but I decided that rather than applying to colleges in every bucket, just all at once, there are rounds here. So round 1 to round 5. Some colleges have 6 rounds, which start from about September, a year before you join the college, to February or March, when in the year that you actually join the college. So I put some colleges in my bucket. I had some names like Warwick, and probably UCL as well, but I never really ended up applying to any of them. So I decided that in the first round I'll focus only on my dream colleges, and when I got 2 out of my 3 dream colleges, I actually stopped applying because applications can be expensive. They cost about 10,000 rupees each,
Right.
in an application, so it adds up. When it came to SOPs and LORs, I would say you need thorough research for that, because every college has a different format. Some colleges require a one one pager SOPs, and then there are some short questions about your career aspirations and the rest. Some colleges have two huge questions. It's just different for every university. So make sure you research a lot. So Imperial, I remember, had a one pager where about 900, 1000 words you had to write about anything you wanted to write on.
Okay.
And secondly, they had a number of short questions on what you want to do after university, which career, where do you want to stay, do you want to get into, which field do you want to get into, all of that. So you need to have clarity, and
Right.
B, you need to have the ability to articulate what you want in the best manner possible.
Right.
SOP was something, where you just, it's a blank sheet of paper. They just ask you to write.
Right.
And I would recommend you taking a day or two to think about what you want to show to the university, because you have just one page, and I know one page isn't enough to describe, but it has to be in the most succinct way possible.
Yes.
I would say start thinking about what you want to show to them and try to make it interesting. It has to be a story. For me, it was a story about how, I was a very confused child, and how I did different things trying to figure out what I want to do in life. So a little bit background is that I started a business when I was 17, because I had some financial issues in my family, and I started another business when I was 18, 19. So I figured that I always had that entrepreneurial drive. But none of these businesses could really scale because I was 17, I was naive, and I did not have the exposure. I just wanted to get a degree and work for a firm in London, where a huge firm in London, with a global approach, where I can know how to scale things to the next level. So you have to have a solid reason for studying outside, otherwise universities don't tend to accept you. So that's a little bit about the SOPs. When there are short questions as well, what you want to do, I would say be as specific as you can. People say that I want to get into banking. No, that won't work. People say they want to get into consulting. That won't work. Consulting, where? What type of consulting? Is it tech consulting? Is it management strategy? Be very precise. And also list out the firms that you want to get into. You don't have to get into them, but it's good to have an aim. And colleges have the clarity.
Right.
So that's a little bit about the short questions.
Okay.
About the LOR, please have a favorite teacher in your university, and a teacher
Who wrote your LOR? Who was the professor?
It was actually the principal of my university. So I had decent connections with her, and we had a pretty good rapport going on. So please, it does not have to be the highest ranking professor. Let me make it very clear. It should be a professor that you've worked with closely and who knows you well. And secondly, just please notify your professor in advance that you require a letter of recommendation, because that takes a lot of time. Secondly, what people usually do here, and this is common practice by the way, is they write their own letter of recommendation and run it via the professor, and the professor makes the necessary changes, and then they sign and give it to them. You also require a professional letter of recommendation. So if you have good ties, if you have performed excellently well in an internship or a full-time job, make sure that you loop in your manager inside. Let him write his letter of recommendation, or you can follow the same thing about writing your own and then running it by them. So this will make things easier for them, and you can portray everything you want to convey to the university from your manager. So it's a blend of both things.
Right.
That's pretty detailed.
Okay, perfect. So now let's move forward to your visa process. How much time did it take for you to get your visa? And what was the gap like between the whole visa process and your GRE exam and maybe the application, the acceptance form as well? Tell us something about that.
I'll give you a proper timeline. I joined university in September 2021. I applied. I gave my GRE in August 2020. So about a year. So plan in advance. and then I applied to universities in September, October 2020, just after getting my GRE.
Right.
I needed a GRE score of 325 plus because it's not like a dead stop, but universities tend to prefer 325 plus scores. And anyone can get it if they just put in enough hard work. You don't have to be a genius. After that, after I finished applications, I had interviews from universities. LBS had an in-person interview whereas Imperial had a recorded interview.
So what are these interviews like? I mean, let's talk about these interviews.
Okay.
What kind of questions do they ask? And yeah, please go on.
Mostly they want to, so you have to know that these colleges, you are a student, but you are a statistic to them as well. They publish reports every year, and they like to brag about the salaries that the students get. So they want to know how employable are you.
Okay.
Have you set your goals clear, and be not just employable, but will you be able to get one of the best jobs in the country to boost their numbers, and see how diligent are you and how well would you fit in with the community there. So each college has a different community. I would say the college LBS has a very formal community, and you might be an excellent student, but you might not just fit in there. That's okay. Imperial, I would say, has a community which is a little, chilled out. They like to take bets on students. You don't really have to have the perfect profile, the big brand internship, the distinction awards, nothing like that. There are people who have gotten without those as well. So they like to take bets on people, and people in the end reward them back. LSE likes academic profiles. These are stereotypes, but this is something that I've seen as well.
Okay.
So they like profiles which are very academically keen and require they don't focus a lot on work ex, but they require a handsome decent marks in your undergrad or everything. So
Okay.
keep that in mind a bit. Don't go hard by it, but that's just some guide points.
All right. Perfect.
So sorry, I did not address the question about the visa process.
Yes.
That was an important part and a little confusing part. Indians need to keep a certain amount of money, and it was a huge amount of money, about 30-40 lakhs, I remember,
Okay.
in their bank accounts for 1 month continuously,
Okay.
before they can apply for the visa, to show that they can fund for themselves. And so that I realized this rule very late, and that was a mistake on my end. So and the visa processing takes about 3 weeks, but it's peak student season around June, July, when people are trying to fly off in August and September. So it usually takes even more than a month sometimes. And I got delayed with the 30-month bank waiting period. So I decided to opt for a priority visa, which take less than a week, but it took more 12 days for me due to the delays. So you have to pay extra for the priority visa, but I had no option because my university was starting and I had to go there and quarantine as well.
Right. So what are the best intakes for Imperial College?
So they just have one intake, and that is autumn intake, September. They don't do Jan intakes.
Okay. All right. So now that we have covered your campus, your application process, the course details as well, now let's move ahead for the future prospect.
Right.
Recession has hit the world, right? Are you facing some stigma around it? Are you nervous about the job prospect? What's the situation like in London?
You are correct. So recession has had a major impact, and it's widespread. So you can face this in two ways. A, cost of living has gone high. When I go to the groceries, I go weekly, I see the price of regular necessity products going up steadily. Every time I go, something is 30-40 rupees more expensive, and it just adds up into your bills. It eats up into your savings as well. So that is one thing that has been going. But the bigger issue, let's address it, is jobs. None of us are oblivious to the facts what companies are doing right now. They are firing people left and right. I would say UK has faced some some effect to that as well, especially some industries like banking and tech. UK does not have a lot of tech like the US does, but it has a huge presence in banking. And I would say people are being fired, but it's usually the accessory parts, like, recruiters are being fired right now because they have freezed all hiring.
Yes.
So there are some other people who've been fired as well, but none that I know very, very well. The none which were with me at university, but it certainly made getting a job this year much more difficult than it was for us. So had I joined in 2020, I would have to face a recessionary time due to COVID. 2021 was a very decent job market where I got my job.
Yes.
2022 again is a recessionary market where jobs are not readily available. Although I would say that it's not completely true, because I know people who have got a job even in these turbulent times. So
Right. Okay. So I want to ask, in your college, are you also in touch with your seniors, and do seniors also help you in getting a job?
Two parts to this answer. I am in touch, and I was in touch with my seniors. So before I came, I actually went through the alumni network, make use of LinkedIn for this, and reach out to them and get tips on how to apply and how to interview and what kind of profile you need to have. You would see that your college alumni network is more than happy to help you out in such situations. Some people are extremely kind for, referral system does exist here, but it's not very big. Not something like, it would be a deal breaker. But what they really do is they meet you outside for, say, something like coffee, and give you a lot of tips and a lot of, important key points on what to take during your applications, which end up being a game changer. And especially if you want to do stuff like consulting, which requires case studies and multiple rounds of interviews. So that's very helpful there as well, because you know how to prepare for it and what to do when you face something like that.
Right. All right. So let's talk about your part-time jobs and the internships. What are the part-time jobs that are available in your university, and what did you end up doing?
Right. So part-time jobs were very scarce in my university because the undergrads usually took up most of them. So there are pretty decent jobs available in the college bar and the college canteen and the college, they have their own merchandise shop. So you could work there. But I would say there's a plethora of opportunities outside of campus, and there's no restriction on working whatever you want to do. So I know there are people who take up jobs in chains, like there's a chain called as Boots here, which is a pharmaceutical chain. So I have a friend who worked there. I myself worked at different places. It's a learning experience as well. So I worked at I started working at a stationery shop where I worked, so I help people make their payments. Everything was done, self-checkouts are pretty common here.
Okay.
So I help people into that. Then I started working for a pharmaceutical company it was a proper internship that I did. Then I got back to part-time job where I worked at firms like Uniqlo, then another clothing brand, and then I ended up with, again, a stationery brand. So here and there, it has helped me build a network of friends. And so, it's important to keep yourself grounded. No work is small or big, so it's just best, it's a very nice experience to have when you're here.
Right, agreed. So these are some very great points that you've mentioned, that you work here and there, you grow your network, you make friends, you get to know people. I think a lot of our aspirants who are looking to study abroad, be it UK, be it US, Canada, any place in the world, I think the equation remains the same for everybody, right? So cool. I think we are done with most of our questions, Yatharth. But do you want to give us a final advice, give our viewers a final advice about how should they approach their study abroad journey? And if you want to add something else as well, that would be great.
Some advice that I would give is, when you're thinking about studying abroad, don't just think about going abroad to study. Have a plan in place, firstly. because it's a huge investment that you need to make. So I would say not having unrealistic 5-year plans, but even what you would want to do after you graduate. Where do you want to work? Do you have enough knowledge about the place that you're going to? Because geographies differ. Even there are difference between one country as well. So I would say do your research very well. Try to get as many scholarships as you can. There are plenty of scholarships available in India and outside, and I was a recipient of one of them. It wasn't a huge amount, but even an amount like 1-2 lakhs pay, it's a huge burden off your chest as well as your parents. So look into scholarships, look into how you can come here and utilize your time in the best way, because 1 year is very short and most master degrees are 1 year and it goes away in a flash. So make sure you have a plan in place on what you want to do when you come here and what you want to do after, and that will help you maximize the returns from your study abroad.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for giving us your time, Yatharth. It was lovely talking to you. And I'm very sure a lot of people who are maybe aiming to go to Imperial in the next intake might get a lot of information from this particular video. So thank you so much for doing this. To our viewers, we might also mention Yatharth's LinkedIn URL in our description. So if you ever want to talk and might need some help, you can directly contact him. And for other queries, other study abroad related queries, we have our industry experts sitting here at College Dunia waiting to help you with your queries. Just tap on the first link in our description box, fill in your basic details, and we'll get back to you shortly within 48 to 72 hours. So Yatharth, thank you so much for doing it. You take care of yourself.
My pleasure, and certainly I'm ready to help out anyone who has any questions or anything on my LinkedIn as well. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.